and other parts of Luzon.
So far, as of this morning's reporting, we don't have any casualties yet. None had been officially reported to us, but we received report of initial information of 3 to 4 injured persons in Cagayan. And we received information about a vehicular accident involving a bus in Nagilian, Isabela, where 2 possible fatalities were reported. But this is still being investigated and validated by our counterparts in the local government unit to determine whether this is indeed connected to the storm or not.
Around 1,000 people were evacuated in the Ilocos region, Cagayan Valley, and in the Cordilleras. No word yet if they have returned home. Some 600 others who sought refuge in their relatives' homes also received government assistance. Let's now head to Cagayan province, one of the hardest hit areas. Live from Tuguegarao City is our correspondent Stanley Gahete. Stanley, what is the situation like there?
At least 17 barangays here in Tuguegarao City were hit hard by Florita's onslaught, and local authorities say as many as 621 families were affected by floods. The local government has prepared more than 2,000 relief packs containing rice, water, canned goods, sugar, bread, coffee, and milk. But the city's social welfare office has yet to finalize the total number of residents who will receive aid, with more barangays still submitting their reports on affected communities. Barangay Carita Norte has yet to conduct a visual survey due to heavy rains.
Perennial na yan na problem namin yan. Parang flash flood na, o rush flood na. So nag-akyatan na ako ng mga gamit.
Meron pang mga additional barangays na nagbibigay ni report. They live in a low-lying areas.
Florita left considerable damage to about 19 hectares of cornfields and 13 hectares of rice fields. These are primary commodities in Cagayan province, along with tobacco and peanuts. The city agriculture's office says about 40 farmers were affected. Tuguegarao City Mayor Myla Rosario Tinque says they're still assessing the situation to see if there's a need to declare a state of calamity.
We are hoping na dahil bababa na yung water at wala naman ng ulan, baka magkaroon pa ng recovery sa mga crops na yan. I think this is a first na ganun kabilis, no? Because ang tinitignan namin dito yung mga naggawa na ng mga malalaking village, yung mga bagong tinatayo na mga homes and villages. So, yung drainage medyo hindi ata masyadong naayos at kulang-kulang pa po.
City disaster officials are reporting no deaths from Florita, but they say a woman was injured when a tree fell into her house. Relief operations are still ongoing. And that's the latest. Back to you, Pia.
Stanley Gahete there reporting from Cagayan. With Florita now heading to China, local governments of areas affected by flash floods are now rushing their cleanup, especially in public schools where in-person classes have resumed for the first time since the pandemic began. Our senior correspondent David Santos reports.
Just before heading home, residents of San Mateo in Rizal are given food packs. They are among 123 families forced to flee to safer grounds following Tuesday's torrential rains. More than 700 inmates from the San Mateo jail, which lies near the river, also had to be evacuated. In the adjacent Montalban town, Mayor Ronnie Evangelista inspecting communities near the river. In Marikina, workers pumping water to wash away mud after the swollen river also caused flooding in the riverbanks. The local government also rushing the cleanup of its 2 public schools, where over 90 families stayed overnight. Officials want to ensure the schools are ready so that in-person classes can resume by Thursday.
At yun nga ang pakiusap natin doon sa mga evacuees na pumunta gumamit ng ating mga schools na tumulong para pag-alis nila ay malinis yung mga classrooms dahil tayo nga ay nagbukas na ng mga eskwelahan para sa ating mga estudyante.
Ready na ulit namin itong eskwelahan. Ito nga po yung flushing ng ating Bureau of Fire ng Marikina para linisin po yung nagamit na rooms and yung ating grounds for safety po ng ating mga bata.
The San Mateo Marikina River crested by 8 p.m. Tuesday. By Wednesday noon, floodwaters have significantly receded a sign that things are back to normal. David Santos, CNN Philippines.
Educational cash assistance will be more accessible to indigent students in the coming weeks. On Wednesday, the Interior and Social Welfare Departments teamed up to bring the cash aid down to local governments. A 1.5 billion peso budget is allotted for the program that aims to serve 375,000 to 400,000 students nationwide. 1,000 pesos will be given to elementary students, 2,000 for those in junior high school, 3,000 for senior high, and 4,000 pesos for college and vocational school students.
Ang assistance lang po ng LGU, ng DILG muna. DILG will provide police at saka request barangay tanod para maayos po yung pila dun sa venues. Sa LGU naman po, sila mayor magpo-provide po ng social workers nila, yung municipal at city social workers po nila. Sila po yung mag-i-screen. Pagdating po ng tao, titignan ho lang yung documents. Kami ang mag-i-interview para maiwasan natin yung sinasabing patronage. Ang DSWD main or national.
Ang pera manggagaling ay hindi rin pera galing kay mayor o galing kay gobernador o galing kay kapitan. Ang pera ay magmula sa national government sa ahensya mismo ng DSWD.
Students or parents of those eligible for the one-time cash aid need to check the social media pages of their local governments for registration. The DSWD says walk-ins will not be accommodated to avoid a repeat of the chaotic distribution last Saturday. Several DSWD offices across the country that day had long lines and massive crowds rushing to get assistance. More stories up ahead. Several Customs Bureau officials have been relieved of their posts following an investigation into alleged sugar smuggling in Subic. And ABS-CBN and TV5 decide to temporarily hit the brakes in their investment deal. Keep it here on Newsnight. Welcome back to CNN Philippines. Around 3,000 buses are back on the road following the decision of transport regulators to allow the resumption of trips along 133 pre-pandemic routes. The LTFRB began accepting applications of special permits last week prior to Monday's opening of classes. The agency is expecting more applicants soon as it seeks to review the status of public utility vehicles with expired franchises because of the pandemic. LTFRB Chairman Cheloy Garafil says over 1,000 units have yet to be given permits to resume trips.
May 28 na ruta po tayo na nag-apply ng kanilang mga franchises ng special permits. Pero doon sa mga nag-apply, nakita natin na although marami po yung na-deploy, may mga areas pa din po na hindi fully deployed yung ating mga PUBs. Matatandaan natin, 2 years din po sila na hindi nagbiyahe. Kaya marami pong mga mechanical consideration at saka mga administrative na issues pa na kanilang inaayos.
Transport groups earlier urged the LTFRB to waive penalties for PUVs with expired franchises. Manibela Chairman Mar Valbuena stressed that hefty fees discourage some drivers and operators from renewing their registration. The Customs Bureau relieved 6 officials at the port of Subic after they were tagged in the investigation into alleged sugar smuggling. Last Thursday, authorities reported an attempt at the Subic port to smuggle around 140,000 bags of imported sugar from Thailand. That's valued at over 45 million pesos. The BOC says the 6 officials have been temporarily transferred to the Office of the Commissioner pending the results of the inquiry. Authorities also seized more than 466,000 sacks of sugar from 3 warehouses in Cagayan de Oro after reports of widespread hoarding. Warehouses are owned by Crystal Sugar Milling. Despite declaring himself as part of an independent bloc in the Senate, Senator Alan Peter Cayetano is elected minority leader of the powerful Commission on Appointments. As Amor Santos tells us, the minority senator refuses to recognize Cayetano's leadership.
Kasihan nawa ako ng Diyos. Congratulations po.
Stirring controversy. Senator Alan Peter Cayetano is elected minority leader of the Commission on Appointments, a powerful body that confirms or rejects presidential appointees.
I'd like to thank my colleagues in the minority and extend, of course, the invitation to Senator Risa. Now, I just like to make on record that her interpretation that there's been a change of nomenclature is not accurate. If you vote for the Senate President, you are in the majority. If you do not, you are in the minority.
GP Party List Representative Jose Pajernos nominated Cayetano. The other member, Congressman Johnny Pimentel, did not object to the former House Speaker's election, while opposition Senator Risa Ontiveros expressed serious concern. She says Cayetano, along with his sister Senator Pia Cayetano, have been calling themselves independent, neither part of the majority nor the minority.
Hindi pwedeng majority tayo o independent tayo o minority tayo sa iba't ibang panahon para sa iba't ibang layunin. This is important for lines of accountability and important to ensure that we have a genuine minority voice.
Senate President Mig Zubiri revealed there were efforts to settle the row before Tuesday's plenary session, but Ontiveros says someone may have worked behind the scenes.
Ayaw mag-giveaway ni Alan, ayaw din mag-giveaway ni Risa. So Alan said, let's just put it to a vote. So happens that the 2 members of the House, Congressman Johnny Pimentel and Congressman G.P. Padiernos, chose Alan Cayetano.
Ang understanding ko nung pagkatapos ng caucus ay susubukan pang pag-usapan ito. Susubukan pang pagkasunduan kami somehow. Kaya mukhang may mas mabilis na nangyari on the floor.
The opposition leader makes it clear she won't recognize Cayetano's leadership. She says she's talking to Senate Minority Leader Coco Pimentel about their next move, if any, and it won't get in the way of work.
I will continue to work as a responsible and constructive member of the Senate minority and of the opposition outside the Senate sa Commission on Appointment. In conscience, I cannot work under him as the minority leader of the CA.
In a text message to CNN Philippines, Pimentel says he won't comment for now while he's still gathering the facts. Amor Santos, CNN Philippines.
Weather update now. Florita may have exited Philippine waters, but Pag-asa says the severe tropical storm now called Maon will intensify the southwest monsoon, affecting the western portion of Luzon. Maon was last located 585 kilometers west of Calayan, Cagayan. Pag-asa says the Ilocos region, Zambales, Bataan, Occidental Mindoro, and Palawan will still see cloudy skies as well as scattered rains and thunderstorms. There may be flash floods or landslides from the rain, while Metro Manila and the rest of the country can expect partly cloudy to cloudy skies with isolated thunderstorms. Consumers in Metro Manila and nearby provinces may see an increase of up to 30% in their electric bills this October. That is, if the Energy Regulatory Commission fails to act on a joint petition by SMC Global Power and Meralco for a temporary rate hike on their two power supply agreements. SMCGP explains this will help them recover losses from the spike in global oil prices and will prevent them from looking and relying on alternative and costlier power sources abroad to protect consumers. SMCGP is only seeking a 30 centavo per kilowatt hour increase in the next 6 months, or a total of 360 pesos for 6 months for households using 200 kilowatt hours per month. That is lower than the estimated increase of up to 1 peso and 30 centavos per kilowatt hour in 3 to 4 months, or 1,040 pesos in total, if the petition will be ignored by the ERC. A headless body was found after the explosion on a boat that supposedly carried Benito and Wilma Tiamzon, consultants of the Communist Party of the Philippines National Democratic Front. The armed forces confirming that a female body without a head and torso was found floating in the waters near the shoreline of Tarangnan in Samar province yesterday. That town is almost 17 kilometers away from Catbalogan City, where military forces had an encounter with members of the New People's Army who were on a boat. Joint Task Force Storm Commander Major General Edgardo de Leon earlier said they still cannot confirm whether the Tiamzon couple was among those on board. Police investigators gathered laboratory samples to determine the identity of the body, which was buried by the local government of Tarangnan. CNN Philippines has reached out to the CPP NDF. Over 240 billion pesos is allotted for the Defense Department in the proposed 2023 budget. As Congress deliberates on funding, foreign policy experts urge lawmakers to prioritize the country's security, given our alliance with the United States and its tensions with China. Our Tristan Odalo, who is in Beijing for a 3-month study grant, reports.
China insists that the United States started the crisis in Taiwan, and all its decisions and actions over the Taiwan Strait can't be considered an overreaction. Beijing defended its military exercises and said that these are legitimate and justified, and the U.S. blatantly infringed on China's sovereignty. With these brewing tensions between the two major superpowers, foreign policy and international security experts are sounding the alarm over the possibility of the Philippines being dragged into the crisis. In a virtual forum, they say the government should keep a close watch on the developments over Taiwan. It's also high time for the Philippines, they say, to come up with a national Taiwan strategy.
We will definitely be dragged into this issue because the U.S. might use our bases as a launchpad to go to Taiwan, to defend Taiwan. What is our relationship with the United States? How do we want to ally with the United States in the issue of Taiwan? That's the first thing we have to assess.
Do we have a contingency to address the protection of our overseas Filipino contract workers there? A lot of Taiwanese, that will plan to go to the Philippines for protection, shelter, and even refugee, applying for refugee status. So the second and third is the military aspect of our participation in that war situation, because definitely, the reason why the United States is serious in strengthening its alliance with the Philippines, primarily because of Taiwan contingency.
Experts say there is a need to reassess our military alliance with the United States and weigh in on the country's interest.
We just have to go back to World War II. Manila was one of the most, the cities that was
in the world,
most devastated
in the world,
because we allied with the allied powers, and we were a target. The point is we can be dragged into war. We have to appraise our relationship with the United States.
Washington, meantime, maintains that it is committed to its One China policy.
We do not support Taiwan independence, and we expect cross-strait differences to be resolved by peaceful means.
As for the Philippine-China relations, both countries reaffirm strengthening bilateral ties.
Do not make disputes front and center of relations. So we have disputes with China on the West Philippine Sea in the same way as the Philippines and Vietnam, Philippines, Malaysia, but we also have disputes in that flashpoint. So managing that different disputes will be very important.
Philippines continues to uphold its One China policy, which recognizes Taiwan as part of China. And because of its strategic location, Manila's future decision over Taiwan will become a great deal to US and China. In Beijing, Tristan Udalo, CNN Philippines.
A pause in an investment deal between ABS-CBN and TV5 as the House of Representatives looks into the details of the buy-in. As Cian Arcangel tells us, at least 2 government regulators have not found any violation committed by either network.
ABS-CBN and TV5 are putting their investment deal on hold to address concerns raised by the National Telecommunications Commission and some lawmakers. In a statement, the 2 networks said the break will give them the space to respond to issues and accommodate any relevant changes to the terms of the deal. ABS-CBN and TV5 released a statement ahead of the hearing on the agreement with the House Committees on Legislative Franchises and Trade and Industry. ABS-CBN earlier announced its plan to purchase a third of TV5's outstanding capital stock for 2.16 billion pesos. The Lopez-led network is also eyeing the purchase of around 1.8 billion worth of convertible notes to be issued by TV5, subject to regulatory approvals. For the Securities and Exchange Commission, ABS-CBN and TV5's investment deal isn't considered a merger. While the SEC says it hasn't found any violation committed by ABS-CBN, it recommends a closer scrutiny of the deal. The SEC is also suggesting that lawmakers should look into the matter of controlling interest to see if the deal needs Congress's approval.
The Commission will defer to the Congress on what constitutes controlling interest. The Commission respectfully submits that a further thorough examination of the provision of these agreements must be made. Until then, the Commission cannot make, as yet, any final determination on whether any violation was made by ABS-CBN.
The Philippine Competition Commission says ABS-CBN and TV5 are not required to inform the agency of the deal since its value is below the 50 billion peso threshold, which will compel the PCC to conduct a review. Like the SEC, the PCC says it hasn't found any violation committed by either networks.
We cannot at this point categorically state that there's any violation. It will have to be after we conduct an economic analysis.
The NTC, however, says it cannot clear the investment deal just yet since ABS-CBN has a pending case before the Commission. It adds TV5 needs to submit clearances from relevant government agencies before giving the green light to the agreement.
Kung ito po ay itutuloy ng TV5, ang kanila pong transaction with ABS-CBN, then we would ask for the said clearances to be submitted to the NTC.
The NTC says it will look into other supposed violations raised by certain lawmakers against ABS-CBN and see if these would have an impact on the investment agreement. Cian Arcangel, CNN Philippines.
Up next on Newsnight, ranked as the world's 3rd best pole vaulter, EJ Obiena wins gold in Germany, besting world's number 2, Chris Nielsen. And K-pop sensation BTS all set to perform at a free-for-all global concert as ambassadors for the Busan World Expo 2030. You're watching CNN Philippines. Welcome back. The severe drought in the U.S. state of Texas uncovered a little piece of history. Take a look at these dinosaur tracks from about 113 million years ago in a dried out river at Dinosaur Valley State Park. A park official says these likely came from an Acrocanthosaurus, which weighed 7 tons and was 15 feet tall. Sports updates now. NBA superstar Kevin Durant is sticking with the Nets to, quote, bring a championship to Brooklyn. Durant initially requested a trade following a bumpy year for the Nets as the Boston Celtics swept them out of the playoffs. Top cagers like Durant, Kyrie Irving, and Ben Simmons set to play for the Nets in the coming season, which begins in October. The final 12 for Gilas Pilipinas' match against Lebanon for the FIBA World Cup Asian qualifiers set to be unveiled tonight. The initial 13-man roster includes NBA player Jordan Clarkson, Kai Soto, and Dwight Ramos. Head coach Short Reyes shares his thoughts about the Gilas pool ahead of the squad's game against the FIBA Asia Cup silver medalists on Friday, Philippine time.
Right now, we're still in the getting to know you stage on how to play together. Hopefully we can fast track it. We have 2 more practices in Lebanon, and you're an athlete, you know how important chemistry is to winning games, right? But the good thing is everyone is determined, everyone is prepared to play his best. And like I said, we've never had not even a tune-up game or a full game under our belts as a team. And our first game as a team is going to be in Lebanon on the 25th. So that's the only time we'll find out what kind of strength the team has.
That game on Friday, 2 a.m. Philippine time. The TNT Tropang Giga and the San Miguel Beermen go head-to-head again for the PBA Philippine Cup Championship. Game 2 of the finals is ongoing with San Miguel capturing an early lead the second quarter, 45-44. The Tropang Giga already have 1 win in the series. A strong opening for the second half of pole vaulter EJ Obiena's season, clinching the gold in an event in Joachim, Germany. Obiena cleared 5.81 meters, besting 10 other athletes, including world number 2 Christopher Nielsen. Obiena announced he has met the standard for next year's World Athletics Championships in Hungary. Spider-Man: No Way Home is set to return to Philippine cinemas on September 7. The film will include never-before-seen footages of all 3 Spider-Men, Tom Holland, Andrew Garfield, and Tobey Maguire. They called it the more fun-stuff version, as it is 11 minutes longer than the original film.
Spider-Man: No Way Home is back in theaters.
Who's coming with me?
Catch it on the big screen.
Well, I'm in.
With new footage.
We should do this again. You got it.
Spider-Man: No Way Home.
The hit movie returns to cinemas to allow more Filipinos to watch it on the big screen, as it originally opened in January when seating capacity was limited because of COVID-19. Great news now for K-pop fans. Global sensation BTS set to hold a free concert in Busan. The concert is called Yet to Come in support of South Korea's bid to host the 2030 World Expo. The concert will take place on the evening of October 15th at the Busan Special Stage. Tickets can be reserved via Interpark. And that is it for tonight. Join me again on News.ph at 7 p.m. and on Politics as usual at 8. I'm Pia Ontiveros for Newsnight, where we go above and beyond the headlines.
This program is brought.
The Philippines is known for its tropical islands and beautiful beaches. But with our humid climate comes a host of insects roaming around that we need to safeguard ourselves from. While they're usually not harmful, they can be annoying and still carry a few risks. On the program today, we'll talk about the most common insect bites, how to prevent them, and what to do if you get one. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez, and welcome to MedTalk Health Talk on CNN Philippines. If you see a red, throbbing mark on your skin that's often itchy, you might have been bitten by a bug, or as our dermatologist colleagues like to refer them as arthropod bites. Now, our guests are here today to tell us what to do if this happens. With us is Dr. Maria Isabel M. Belisario. She's a board-certified dermatologist from the Belisario Skin Clinic. We're also joined by Dr. Charles Edward Florendo. He's a family medicine specialist and the chief of clinics of the Mary Child's Hospital. Thank you both for joining us on the show. Let's talk about some of the more common insects that are prevalent here in the Philippines and that you see na madalas makagat ang mga Pilipino.
Well, number one, ang pinakamadalas nating nakukuha dito, lamok. Lamok talaga. Kahit saan sa Pilipinas, ang daming lamok. Iba-ibang klaseng lamok. May mga lamok na sa umaga, may sa gabi. Pero nakita rin ako ng gagat ng ipis occasionally. And then maraming langgam. Pero marami sa mga kinakagat ng langgam di na pumupunta sa ospital kasi di naman gano'n ka-serious.
Yes, that's right. All of these bugs have their own varying effects on our body and they usually aren't harmful, but it's also good that we know what to do whenever one bites us and not to take it too lightly. Doc Maris, when it comes to cockroach bites, let's say, when someone's bitten by a cockroach and they see an inflammation, is this something they see a raised bump? It's red. Is this automatically something that people should bring to a doctor?
Well, definitely. One thing that we have to know about being bitten by cockroaches is they usually go to areas where they smell residual food. So common areas that are affected are usually the eyelids, the hands, and the mouth. And these can happen with mild symptoms such as simple as a red bump and can lead to local swelling. However, you always have to watch out for anaphylactic reactions. And in case that the patient experiences difficulty of breathing already, then that's the only time that the patient can immediately want emergency intervention. But if it is just a local red bump as of present time, then the patient can use as simple as an oral antihistamine or a topical moisturizer to help calm down this bump.
Now, Doc Maris, you bring up a good point. A lot of our viewers may be bitten by a mosquito, by a cockroach, or whatever insect, and they just wait. They just wait for it to go away, and most of the time, it usually does. What's a good time frame for that bite to still show on someone's skin, namumula, namamaga, bago nila dalhin sa doktor?
Actually, it depends. Each person is always different because we all have different skin types. Some patients would experience bites for like 1 to 2 days. However, some bites can remain up to a week or more. But a good marker for when to bring to the doctor is if these itch very persistent, because definitely we have to be wary or careful about the possibility of getting a secondary bacterial infection from the chronic scratching. So there is actually no strict rule as to the number of days, but most likely a better gauge could be the length of time that the patient cannot tolerate the itch or baka hindi na siya makatulog o sugat-sugat na yung balat.
Now, Charles, let's talk about what Maris mentioned earlier, that certain bites may cause what's called an anaphylactic reaction. What is this and how can our viewers spot this, thinking that this is about to occur?
Well, sa mga ibang mga insects, particularly mga bees, no? So if you have wasp, kapag kinagat sila, may mga venomous substances yan na pwedeng kumalat sa katawan ng tao. So usually, lumalaki yung pagkapula, hindi lang siya nasa area na yan, lumalaki, tapos yung person can experience difficulty of breathing at saka namumula yung buong katawan. Yan yung maluba. Pag nagkaroon na yan, mga difficulty of breathing and all, very dangerous na yan. So we have to give them strong medication in the hospital to reverse it immediately.
Marius, let's talk about lice or kuto, especially sa mga bata. Are there telltale signs na isang bata or even an adult has infection of lice?
Yes, definitely, you're correct. Predominantly, pediatric age group is one of the most common patients to experience this between 3 to 12 years old. However, aside from the presence of the nits or yung mga lisa, the eggs of these kuto, you can also notice that bites usually appear on the back of the ears and on the area of the nape. Kasi yung mga kuto, mahilig sila sa madidilim na areas of our scalp. So they prefer back of the ears, back of the neck. And also, aside from that, patients can experience fever and lymphadenopathies on these areas. May mga kulani na sa likod ng tenga. They can also experience irritability dahil sobra yung pangangate nila. So these are the telltale signs sometimes that, your child might have a problem with lice.
Yes, okay. So it's important for parents to know those telltale signs para mapagamot nyo na kagad yung anak ninyo. Now, Charles, earlier you talked about anaphylaxis as a emergency situation. Now, not so much an emergency situation, but a reason for people to go to the emergency room is when an insect such as a cockroach or any other, even an ant, gets inside someone's ear. What are some of the tips with regards to insects that try to seek refuge in a person's ear? How should they handle this? Should they try to remove that insect immediately, or should they go to the emergency room because of certain procedures that should be done?
Well, if nasa labas pa naman yung insects, hindi pa naman pasok na pasok and they can remove it, pwede. But never use cotton buds. Kasi pag ginamitan ng cotton buds, susuksukin mo yan, papasok pa yan. And then you're gonna be into big trouble there, no? So sa hospital, we do have a scope and then we can remove it. So magandang they can bring to the hospital. Never use cotton buds.
Knowing what signs to watch out for can help you address these bug bites faster. So more on this when we return. We're your partner in healthcare. Keep it here on MedTalk Health Talk, only on CNN Philippines. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez and welcome back to MedTalk Health Talk on CNN Philippines. A lot of people, when they have a bite, they just scratch it, they leave it alone. But a common symptom of insect bites is that itch. Let's explain why this happens and what could happen kapag kinamot lang siya ng kinamot.
So definitely the symptoms of an insect-related bite is periitis, you're correct. And this can also lead sometimes to hives or nagpapantal na siya. And this is actually the skin's reaction to the toxins or the venom that was introduced to your skin. A secondary problem can occur from chronic scratching, and that is secondary bacterial infections. Nagkakaroon na ng langgib ang mga sugat. And you know, the skin is very, very smart. The longer you scratch it, the thicker it becomes, and the bigger the problem because it starts becoming itchy again. So it is very important to recognize if you are already unable to sleep at night or having so many secondary bacterial infections already. Please seek medical consultation.
Now, Doc Charles, let's talk about mosquitoes again because as you said earlier, it is the most common no matter where you are in the Philippines. And some of the more common diseases that we can get from mosquitoes is that of dengue, malaria, even chikungunya. Please talk about some of these and what are some of the symptoms that may reflect of these three diseases para malaman ng ating mga viewers.
The number one symptom nitong tatlong ito are all fever. Ng dengue, yan yung pinaka-common. Pabalik-balik yung fever, ayaw mawala. Ang delikado sa dengue, kapag nagkaroon ng bleeding, let's say dumudugo yung ilong, nag-iiba yung kulay ng ihe, pwedeng maging dangerous na po sa dengue. So magandang maagapan natin sa ospital, babantayan natin yung dugo, and then we have to hydrate the patient. Karamihan naman sa kanila, they recover. Pero yung mga lumalala, they need specific interventions. Yung malaria naman comes from a parasite. It's a parasite na tumutubo sa katawan ng tao. And this one, yung fever nito, ganun din, bumabalik-balik siya every how many days. It's more common sa mga mountainous areas sa Philippines, particularly Mindoro, Antipolo, Palawan, and it's very deadly, ang malaria. So the fever can get very bad. There is specialized medicines available in the mga areas, mga hospital na nasa area na to, at saka yung mga specialized infectious diseases areas. Chikungunya naman is similar to dengue, pero it will cause a lot of joint pains. So may mga tao na after nilang gumaling, wala ni fever, tuloy-tuloy yung mga joint pains nila. And it can happen pwedeng for years. Minsan 1 month, minsan years bago mawala yung joint pains na yan.
Let's talk about personal hygiene for some reason. Does personal hygiene affect the tendency or the risk of being bitten by a mosquito?
Yes, definitely. Insect bites or these flying insects are actually attracted to our sweat and body heat. So taking a bath twice a day at least is still a good preventive measure to avoid being bitten.
Doc Maris, there's been some studies na ang blood type daw ng isang tao ay nakakapag-increase at decrease man lang ng mga chances of being bitten by a mosquito. Is there any truth to this?
Actually, there are some studies that say that the blood type O actually attracts more bites. However, it is still very important to note that there are also other individual factors such as is the patient more white or is the patient wearing bright colors, because these are also factors that attract these insects, and is the patient wearing perfume, because that is also a factor. So not blood type alone, definitely. They recognize it actually as a form of heat on their part. And so these flying insects like perspiration or your sweat and body heat.
So when it comes to itchiness, mosquito bites, what is the best treatment for this?
Definitely, if you want something to do right at the onset, the patient can use oral antihistamines that they have readily at home. And topical moisturizers, actually any unscented or oatmeal-based lotions, can help calm down the skin. However, to be very honest, I would like to discourage patients from self-medicating any topical creams or ointments, as this may actually lead to more harm than good. So it is still always best to seek consultation at the onset to address the root cause of the problem and stay away from secondary untoward side effects of topical creams.
Now, Maris, para sa mga viewers namin na mahilig sa mga home remedies, are there cheap home remedies that are effective on minor insect bites?
Well, cold compress is very cheap. You can get it in your freezer. That can help. And like I mentioned, any moisturizing lotion can help. Basically, that's it. I would not like to suggest any other home remedies, as this may actually lead to more irritation in the skin.
Now, the good news is there are steps that you can take to protect against these pesky insects. More on this when we return. Your health is our mission here on MedTalk Health Talk. You're watching CNN Philippines. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez, and this is MedTalk Health Talk on CNN Philippines. Bug bites can be annoying, painful, and at extremely rare times, a serious condition. Now, it can't hurt to take steps in your everyday to protect against them. Doc Charles, let's talk about that. How can people protect themselves every day? Could you give us some tips? What are some changes that we can make in our own lifestyle as well as our household to prevent these insects from getting us?
Yes, first of all, alam mo, yung good cleanliness is really a good, it's the very first foundation talaga. So for instance, after you eat, you have to wash your dishes well. Tapos yung mga leftover kailangan naka-seal. Kasi sometimes pag naka-open, this attracts a lot of insects, particularly mga ipis. For mosquitoes, make sure na yung mga windows nyo naka-screen, nakasara. And then I also recommend, make sure wala kayong mga waterways na open sa area nyo. Let's say merong sa garage ninyo, sa street ninyo, may konting naka-water dyan. You have to clean it, remove that water kasi yan yung mga binabahayan ng mga lamok. If you would like to use yung mga insect repellents, you could use them. Marami mga stuff that you can use to repel them. But I would like to be cautious, no? Kasi marami sa mga, let's say, mga katol, maraming makakatol that are coming in that have harmful ingredients. Some people have used citronella oils. They have 50-50. Some people say na talagang effective siya. Some people say parang wala effect. You may want to try them out also.
Doc Maris, when it comes to insect repellents, there are many on the market. What is the best option here when it comes to trying to repel insects in a topical form?
Definitely, for mosquito repellents, DEET still remains to be the most effective, and they come in concentrations between 10 to 30%. The varying percentage actually also takes care of how long you are protected. So for DEET, that is 10%, you're protected for about 2 hours. If you use DEET, that is 30%, you are protected for about 5 hours. So it's also very important to take note maybe how long you will be outdoors in order to choose which one is a good option for you. But a word of caution for patients less than 2 months old, as using mosquito repellents are not recommended for them. So using protective clothing is the best option for those who are very, very young.
Now, Doc Maris, you mentioned na bawal ito sa 2 months old and younger. So does that mean na kapag older than 2 months sa mga bata, safe itong DEET na insect repellent?
Yes, actually, DEET has a higher safety profile than people know. It is recommended basta above 2 months. Less than 2 months, yun lang yung protective clothing.
Now, another insect that we haven't covered, which I think is also very common here, are those of sandfly bites. So sandfly bites look like mosquito bites, pero hindi siya nawawala at persistent yung kanyang symptom ng pangangate. Doc Maris, when it comes to sandfly bites, a common treatment for this is topical steroids in order to alleviate this. But what should our viewers be wary about steroid cream, especially self-medicating with steroid creams?
As dermatologists, when we pick which type of topical steroid we give to our patient, we have a lot of factors that we try to look into. Where is the location of these bites? Gaano siya kakapal? Gaano siya kadami? And how long we intend to ask patients to use them. Because steroids have a high toxicity when you use it at a very long time or use a low potency but for a very, very long time. So, like we always say, medical guidance is still very important before you self-medicate any of these topical steroids. Because it might be tempting kasi nakita mo sa kapitbahay mo, gumaling siya, hinira mo yung ointment niya. That usually happens here in the Philippines. Pero ang problema natin, yung mga side effects ng steroids, masyado mo siyang matagal na ginagamit. Aside from numinipis yung balat because of atrophy, pwede nang kakaroon na rin ng mga pimples, or breakouts dahil sa patuloy na paggamit ng steroid. So definitely, for this, consultation first.
Okay, definitely important information there. Now, Doc Charles, when it comes to treatment of insect bites or whatnot, Doc Maris talked about the risks of steroids. Meron bang gamot na one size fits all or depende talaga ito sa pasyente?
Depende talaga sa patient, and that's why we choose the steroid accordingly. And also, a lot of patients don't really need the steroid. We just have to get them to stop scratching. Kasi yung scratching talaga yung malaking problem, no? Pag ano yan, kakapal. And I see a lot of patients come to me after kumapal na yung balat. So we have to get them to stop scratching. So the first thing I want to advise people also, avoid yung ina-apply ng mga menthol. Meron mga menthol products, yung mabaho talaga nalagay nila. It causes more skin irritation, lumalaki. So if you want to stop scratching, one way is make sure cut your nails. Cut your nails. At saka sometimes yung mga ibang bata pinapalagyan namin ng socks sa kamay para pag nakamot nila sa gabi, hindi siya nakakasira. No, kasi the scratching is really the bigger problem.
Now, Doc Maris, I'd like to go back to one of the insects we talked about earlier, and that is lice. Bakit madalas nakikita ito sa mga bata? How does a child or an adult get infected with lice? And what should they do kapag meron na silang lice?
So definitely, transmission of lice or puto is through head-to-head contact. And there are also fomite. There is actually fomite transmission. So ano ibig sabihin nun? This happens dahil naghihiraman ng suklay, naghihiraman ng hair clip, no? Hair accessories, your beddings also, or sharing of helmets. So this is also very hard to control because mabilis silang dumami.
What are some of the common symptoms ng head lice, Doc Maris?
Actually, makikita mo agad dyan yung mga lisa kasi mahirap silang tanggalin sa shaft ng hair. So makikita mo may puti-puti talaga yan. And the bites are located at the back of the ears usually and on the nape kasi dyan nagtatago yung mga adult lice kasi malamig doon. Hindi sa masyadong nagugulo. So they usually stay in that area. And then patients present with fever and lymphadenopathies, nagkakaroon na rin ng pulane.
Okay, so consult your doctor, your dermatologist, or your family medicine specialist kapag meron kayong mga simptomas na gano'n. So before we go, we definitely learned a lot about insect bites, but before we go, I'd like to get some tips or advice from the both of you. I'll start first with Doc Charles.
Yes, I'd like to advise you to see your doctor. We mentioned steroid creams and all this. I'd like to remind you that these are prescription drugs. Hindi yan basta-basta. Marami pong binibenta sa labas na mga cream and all, and many of them contain steroids. Some of them, hindi mo man lang mabasa yung pangalan, hindi man lang English or Filipino yung pangalan. No? Some of them contain dangerous substances, and marami na nakitang nasira ang balat because of these products. So stay away from these products and please consult your doctor.
Yes, that is definitely important to know. So do not buy medications. Despite the cheaper price, it could cost you more later on to fix the problems that it may cause. And of course, Doc Maris, before we go, any advice for our viewers?
Aside from wearing mosquito repellents, do not downplay the use of protective clothing. So choose to wear long pants and long sleeves outside. And again, just to reiterate, avoid wearing bright clothing and using perfume also. Lastly, please watch out for danger signs for anaphylactic reactions. So if the patient already has intense swelling, sobrang namamagana yung mga kagat, nahihirapan na silang huminga, please do not wait and bring the patient immediately to the emergency room.
Yes, definitely. We learned a lot today about bug bites. So with that, thank you very much, Dr. Charles Edward Florendo and Dr. Maria Isabel Belisario for being with us today, sharing your expertise and your tips to our viewers. We appreciate your insights and your time. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez. Thank you for watching MedTalk Health Talk. We'll see you again next time.